The sun had just started to dip below the horizon when I saw her white SUV again, polished, spotless, and utterly out of place on the dirt road that led to my ranch. It shimmered like a sore thumb in the amber glow, a suburban spaceship descending on a patch of dust and stubborn pride. I didn't need binoculars to recognize the driver. The gleam of her oversized sunglasses was enough. Karen, president of the Lakeview Homeowners Association. A woman who'd never met a rule she couldn't weaponize, or a boundary she couldn't ignore. My gate creaked as the chain rattled in protest. She slowed, just enough to size it up, then pressed the gas. The metal groaned. The lock popped loose. The wooden beam gave a tired cry as it swung open, scattering dust. She didn't even glance my way as she rolled through, one manicured hand on the wheel, the other holding a phone, barking into it about property aesthetics and community compliance. My cattle scattered from the noise, startled into motion, tails whipping. I stood on the porch, coffee cup in hand, watching her drive across my land like she owned the damn place. It wasn't the first time. The gate marked the invisible line between what was mine and what wasn't, but to her, it might as well have been a speed bump. The HOA had been creeping closer for years, buying parcels, planting signs, building roads that cut too close. And every time I reminded them where their development ended and my world began, someone like her would come along, certain that country dirt should bow to city rules. I waited for her to leave before I went down. The chain was twisted now, one link bent from where her bumper must have nudged it aside. My boots crunched over gravel as I squatted to inspect it. I could see the faint tracks of her tires, small arcs curving off toward the back trail that connected to the new cul-de-sac her people had built. She didn't even have the decency to reverse out the way she came. That was the first time she'd done real damage. The other times, well, those I could almost forgive. Once she'd parked, just to take a phone call. Another time, her gardener had accidentally left bags of clippings near my fence. But the chain, that was different. It wasn't an accident, it was a message. The next morning, I drove into town for supplies. When I returned, there was an envelope pinned to my gate with a bright yellow pushpin, bold handwriting scrawled across it, ATTN, property owner. Inside was a printed letter on Lakeview wall letterhead, complete with a seal, as if I were being summoned to court. Greater than dear neighbor, it has come to our attention that the gate on your property obstructs shared access to the community maintenance road. Per Section 12B of the Homeowners Code of Conduct, you are required to submit a permit for any barrier that may impede access by emergency or official HOA vehicles. Failure to comply within 10 days may result in penalties or fines. Warm regards, Karen T., HOA President. I read it twice, then laughed out loud. Shared access. That maintenance road was a ranch trail that had existed long before their subdivision had been poured into the earth. There were no emergency vehicles here, just my tractor, a few cows, and an old dog that hated the sound of car engines. That night, I fixed the chain again. I reinforced the post, hammered the lock tight, and hung a new sign, private property. Do not enter. Trespassers will be reported. I didn't expect it to change anything, but it made me feel better, like a soldier redrawing a battle line. The next afternoon, I caught her again. Not driving this time, filming. Standing on the opposite side of the gate, her phone lifted, narrating something about illegal obstruction. When I approached, she smiled, that practiced brittle grin people wear when they think the law's on their side. Afternoon, I said evenly. Mr. Lawson, isn't it? She replied, pretending not to know. We're just documenting. This gate, you see, it violates Section 12B. It's about safety. Safety, I repeated, leaning on the fence post. From what? My cows. She tilted her head, expression sweet as poison. From liability. If someone in the community needs to access the maintenance path, say, a landscaper or an HOA inspector, they shouldn't be inconvenienced by all this. She gestured vaguely at the lock, at my fields, as if the land itself were clutter. I took a slow breath. You do realize this isn't part of Lakeview, right? You're standing on my property line. There's no maintenance path. Never has been. Her smile froze for a fraction of a second before she recovered. Boundaries can be interpreted differently, she said lightly, like it was small talk. We'll let the board decide. Then you tell your board, I said quietly, if they want to interpret anything, they can do it from the right side of that gate. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that carried no warmth, and turned back to her SUV. Don't worry, Mr. Lawson, we'll handle it through the proper channels. When she drove away, she hit the gate again. Not enough to break it this time, but enough to make it swing wide open in her wake. Over the next few days, I started noticing new things. Tire marks again, deeper this time. A few footprints near my barn. A small, metal device, a camera, mounted on the post near the gate, aimed inward. She'd actually installed surveillance on my land. The arrogance of it burned deep, slow, and steady. I didn't touch it. I wanted proof. I took pictures, logged dates and times, even measured the tracks. It wasn't anger anymore. It was strategy forming, something cold and meticulous. I'd dealt with bulls that were easier to reason with than that woman. But bulls, at least, respected fences. The last straw came on a Sunday. I was tending to the water trough when I heard her SUV again. She wasn't alone this time. There were two others with her, clipboard types. They parked inside my gate, chatting, measuring, pointing toward the old oak tree by the fence line. Like they were plotting an expansion, or worse, a claim. I walked up, slow and steady, boots crunching, not saying a word. They noticed me halfway across the pasture and stiffened. Karen, ever the diplomat, waved. Just surveying, she said brightly. Community planning, nothing personal. I stopped 3 feet from her and looked her straight in the eyes. You're trespassing. Oh, please, it's just on camera, I interrupted, pointing to the small GoPro clipped to my belt. Every second of it, that made her blink. For the first time, she didn't have a quip ready. I've got your license plate, your board members' names, and that camera you mounted on my fence. I've already called the sheriff. So, Karen, you have two choices. Leave now, or stay long enough to explain to law enforcement why your community project starts on my land. Her lips parted, then closed again. She motioned for the others to get back in the SUV. Gravel sprayed as they reversed, dust swirling like smoke around them. When the road went quiet again, I stood there for a long time, the silence heavy and satisfying. The wind shifted through the grass, carrying the faint rattle of the gate. It wasn't victory, not yet. But it was a start. The next morning broke calm and clear, with a wind that smelled of dust and sagebrush. The kind of morning that used to mean peace. But peace was something I'd traded away the moment Karen and her SUV crossed my gate again. The bent chain glinted like a scar in the dawn light, and I stood there, hands in my pockets, thinking, not about revenge exactly, something quieter than that, deeper. About setting things right, about teaching a lesson the way this land had taught me mine. Slowly, firmly, without cruelty, but without forgiveness either, I went into the barn and pulled out my old toolbox. The lid creaked open, and inside lay a lifetime of ranch fixes, wire cutters, clamps, an old set of sensors I'd once used for motion lights. I brushed the dust off them. They still worked, more or less. I smiled. A plan began to take shape, one that would sting her pride but leave her unharmed. A trap, but not for the body. For the ego. By mid-morning, I'd driven into town. The hardware store owner, Gus, raised a brow when I walked in with a list. Pressure triggers, die packs, motion alarms. He read, "You starting a paintball range out there?" "Something like that," I said. "Just need to make a point." He grinned. "That wall lady again. Word travels fast. Out here, gossip runs faster than coyotes," he chuckled, filling a paper bag with my items. "Just don't do anything you'll regret." "I won't," I said, though regret wasn't the word circling in my head. Balance was. Back home, I set to work. The first part was simple. I installed a pair of motion sensors on either side of the gate, the kind that triggered a harmless alarm when something crossed between them. I wired them to an old loudspeaker hidden in a feed barrel, and from that speaker, I recorded a message in my own voice. Greater than, private property. Please reverse immediately. It wasn't threatening, just firm, but it would echo through the valley like a judgment from the hills themselves. Then came the fun part. I mixed a batch of non-toxic cattle marking dye, bright blue, thick as syrup, and loaded it into a simple squeeze pump rigged under the dirt road where her tires would likely pass. A gentle trigger would spray the underside of her SUV, coating her precious white paint with indelible color. The kind of stain that said, "You've been somewhere you shouldn't have been." By noon, the heat was heavy, and I wiped sweat from my brow as I worked. That's when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. "Need a hand, friend?" It was Hank, my neighbor to the south, a retired sheriff's deputy with a limp and a sharp sense of humor. He leaned against his truck, squinting at the setup. "Depends," I said. "You okay helping me outsmart an HOA president?" He laughed, a low rumble. "That woman with the clipboard and the fake smile. Count me in." I explained the plan, every step of it. Hank nodded slowly, arms crossed. "Smart. Embarrassing but not illegal. I like it." He grinned. "You should film it too. Might come in handy if she cries harassment." I was thinking the same. He climbed out of his truck and helped me fine-tune the system. He knew how to rig motion sensors from his days setting up security for sting operations. Before long, the gate looked the same as ever, innocent, quiet, but beneath the dirt, it was a symphony of triggers waiting for the right note. As we finished, I saw movement by the fence line, a small figure watching us. "Hey, that you, Cody?" I called. A boy of about 12 stepped out from behind a mesquite tree, baseball cap turned backward. "Yeah, Mr. Lawson. My mom said you needed help." "I didn't, but I won't turn it down," I said, smiling. Cody was the kind of kid who asked too many questions and learned twice as fast as he should. His mom worked part-time at the diner in town, and he spent most of his afternoons exploring the fields. He wandered over, curiosity sparkling in his eyes. "What are you building?" "A reminder," I said. "For people who don't respect other people's land." He grinned like he already approved. "Like a trap, a clever one," Hank said, ruffling his hair. "Nothing dangerous, just a bit of country justice." Cody nodded solemnly. "Can I help paint?" I laughed. "You read my mind." We spent the next few hours crafting the finishing touch, a big banner made from old tarp. Cody painted the words in big block letters with leftover fence paint, "Private property." "Next time, ring the bell." Beneath it, he added a doodle of a cow holding a phone. It was silly, childish, and perfect. By sundown, everything was in place. The gate stood quiet again, no different from before to an untrained eye. But under the surface, it was alive. I leaned against the post, watching the last light fade, and felt something shift inside me, a calm that came from knowing I wasn't helpless. As I packed up the tools, Hank lit a cigarette and blew a slow stream of smoke. "You sure this'll do it?" "It'll start something," I said. "She's the kind that needs to be seen to be humbled. When everyone watches her drive through the mud and die, she won't be able to hide behind her wall letters." Hank nodded. "You know, back when I wore the badge, I learned something about folks like her. They don't fear the law. They fear embarrassment." He was right. Shame was the great equalizer. And out here, under the open sky, pride didn't last long when the dust settled. That night, after they left, I sat on the porch with my old dog, Duke. He was half blind and mostly lazy, but his ears still perked up at the hum of engines. I scratched his head and said softly, "Tomorrow, boy. Tomorrow we remind her what boundaries mean." He wagged his tail like he understood. The moon rose high, throwing silver light across the land. From my porch, I could see the faint glow of the HOA's streetlights in the distance, tiny sparks against the vast dark of the country. Civilization pressing against the wild. It wasn't the first time I'd seen that battle, but it was the first time it had driven straight through my gate. I thought about my father, who'd built this ranch from nothing but calluses and stubbornness. He used to say, "Land's like respect, you don't lose it all at once. You let people chip at it till there's nothing left." Maybe that was what Karen was doing, in her neat, polite way. Chipping, testing, seeing how much she could take before someone stopped her. Well, someone just had. Before turning in, I double-checked the cameras. The feed ran clean, one mounted on the porch, another hidden in the fence post. Both pointed straight at the gate. Every motion would be recorded, every trespass caught. I wasn't just setting a trap, I was setting up evidence. I poured myself a small glass of bourbon, the way my father used to, and sat back in the chair as the crickets filled the night. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. The land breathed, vast and slow. It wasn't revenge that kept me awake, it was anticipation. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how much arrogance could blind a person before reality tripped them. Just before I went inside, I looked once more toward the gate. It stood still, dark against the pale dirt road. Beyond it, the world of HOA bylaws and manicured lawns seemed unreal, like a dream that